Joining us now is a woman who understands the island nation better than most people we know. Anita, Pratap, freelance journalist and author of Island of Blood. Anita, appreciate you joining us here on India Business Hour. Let me start by asking you, were you expecting anything different at the UNHRC? Because while India was trying to move those 7 amendments, running into 6 paragraphs, trying to sort of put together a stricter, more tougher language through those amendments, the US basically saying that they wanted a broadest possible resolution because anything tougher would not have gone through. So were you really expecting anything different?
No, not at all. This is as good as it gets, and you have to do it the UN way. I think people who are a little upset or disappointed that the resolution did not go far enough, I can understand their disappointment, but that's not how the UN system works. You have to take the broadest possible language to get it passed, to get it moved, and then start building on this. This is only the first step, and I would say it is a very good first step.
You're saying it's a very good first step. Let's just look at what was passed by the UN today. The US-sponsored resolution saying the US acknowledges the progress that's been made in some areas, but a lot more needs to be done. Sri Lanka must take meaningful action and address the growing concern. While Sri Lanka on its part has rejected the resolution altogether, do you actually believe that this island nation is going to take this resolution seriously?
See, there will be a lot of negative reaction against this resolution within Sri Lanka. That is only to be expected. But at the same time, a resolution has been passed, and that is a reality. And therefore, there has to be a certain cognizance taken by the Sri Lankan government. They will fuss about a little about it, but that's only just normal. But going forward, it is very important that India, the US, and the United Nations continue to apply pressure on Sri Lanka to fulfill its obligations as a sovereign nation that represents all the people of Sri Lanka, not just the Sinhalese, but the Tamils. President Rajapaksa always says that all the people are the same. We are one nation. Well, that's very good. And let it be translated into action. That's all the people want.
Right. Anita, what is this going to mean now for India-Sri Lanka relationship? Because, you know, things had soured over the past year anyway. We've seen a proximity between Sri Lanka and China, especially as far as business ties are concerned. We've seen anti-India, deliberate, conscious decisions being taken by the Sri Lankan government, like the imposition of additional duties on the auto sector, on Indian imports into Sri Lanka. Do you believe that we're going to see more retaliatory action against India on account of the vote?
It is bound to happen, and I think we should expect it, but we should not rise to the bait. This is exactly what happens in a country which has to respond to certain hardline lobbies within the establishment. There are hawks there. Just as India had to respond to certain political pressure brought upon it by the DMK, so too the Sri Lankan government will also have to face these kind of lobbies and pressures. And it is not for India to respond to this, to retaliate to this, but to be larger and rise above this and win over Sri Lanka, because at the end of the day, the Tamils can be rehabilitated, can be given security, not by India, US or the UN, but by the Sri Lankan government. So it is very important for India to work with the Sri Lankan government to settle the legitimate grievances of the Tamils.
How do you read the domestic politics? Sri Lanka, in fact, the foreign minister speaking to Network 18, saying that we understand India's position, we understand India's domestic compulsions, and we know that the Indian government galvanized into action on account of the demands made by the DMK. Eventually, the DMK decided to pull out nonetheless. But, you know, conversations that I've been having with people seem to suggest that this is really about the DMK versus the AIDMK, the DMK wanting to position itself as, and Karunanidhi wanting to position himself as the leader of Tamils anywhere in the world. How do you see this playing out on the domestic front?
There is no doubt about the fact that the DMK raised this big issue as an election move. It was a political move directed to arouse the sympathies of the Tamils and arise as the custodian of the Tamils. I have been covering this for the last 33 years, and this competitive nationalism that the DMK and the Anna DMK consistently show is just part of a historic pattern. Still, I would say, you know, yesterday I was watching the TV channels, and there seemed to be this opinion that regional parties are hijacking India's national foreign policy. I have a contrarian view on this. I think it is good. It is a display of India's democracy, because at the end of the day, the Indian government is responding to political and public pressure in Tamil Nadu, and I think this is where India is different. You know, China is better than India on many, many fronts, but on one area area where we really do score over China and other countries is our democracy. And I see this, the fact that India took a stronger tactic and took a sterner line and was galvanized into action because of the pressure from DMK, I think it's a good thing, and it shows Indian democracy at work.
Well, you know, pat on the back coming in for the DMK or the government, whichever way that you would like to look at it. They could certainly do with that, given the brickbats that they've been faced with. Anita, Pratap, a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks very much for joining us here and taking us through your analysis of what's happened this evening with the UN vote on Sri Lanka. Appreciate your time and joining us here on India.